gained experience in handling the machine. I found that I could stop for a day, an hour, or even for a second to observe.
And you've used my machine to escape the ends of
I
justice.
must congratulate you on that device. I confess that at dinner the other century, I thought you'd lost your wits. But fate intervened and forced me to ascertain for myself that you are truly the Columbus of a new age.
I've covered!
Trial by stone.
Trial by stone! Holy cat. Hey. It's almost...
Yeah. Almost a perfect...
It is. It's round.
We finally got one.
We found a flying saucer.
He ain't tying me up.
Then I'll have to kill you, child.
Then kill me.
I mean it.
I guess you do.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Osborne Tower, this is Albatross 1-3, requesting permission to land. Over.
I don't need a computer to tell me how to land a damn airplane.
6.
Heads-up display, check.
5.
Lasers, check.
4.
Particle beam, check.
3.
Photon bolts, check.
2.
Chair control, check.
1.
Let's do it.
Broadcasting from a secret underground location somewhere in Mos Eisley, this is the Docking Bay 77 podcast. Make yourself comfortable. The show is about to start.
Hello and welcome to Docking Bay Podcast. This is Robert, your guest host for tonight. And Glorioski, have we got a great show for you tonight. We're going to be talking about the 1979 film Time After Time. It's part of our science fiction series this year, representing the 1970s. We've already done Godzilla and the Time Machine. And here's a fun fact. We haven't recorded that one yet, but you're hearing it first. We're already time traveling tonight. Anyway, I've got two fabulous guests with me tonight. I have the wonderful Amber Lewis.
Hello.
And I have the equally wonderful Eric Dearth.
Hello, how are you?
I am great, and I'm ready to roll with this. This movie's been a favorite of mine for a long time. So, as I said, Time After Time, it came out in 1979. It was written and directed by Nicholas Meyer. It was his first time directing, although he had written a couple films before that, one of which was quite good, and one of which was called Attack of the Bee Girls, or some such nonsense that we don't need to talk about. It was released through Warner Brothers, and we'll give the trailer a little bit of a spin so you can get an idea what the movie was like.
The time is 1893, and novelist and inventor H.G. Wells invites you to join him on a flight from London to San Francisco. In under a minute, you will be transported to a bizarre and fantastic new age. Today, Time After Time. For H.G. Wells, the modern world offers a spectacular array of revelations, embarrassments, and delights.
Well, hello there.
Hello.
What's up, Doc?
I beg your pardon?
You were saying, where to?
Could you please take me as quickly as possible to the Hyatt?
But Wells has not come here as a tourist. His visit will be somewhat more dangerous. For he is pursuing Jack the Ripper, a villain who has eluded his fate by escaping into time.
90 years ago, I was a freak. Today, I'm an amateur.
I'm obliged to take you back to face the consequences of your acts.
You take me back. How do you propose to do that? By force?
Be reasonable, John. We don't belong here.
A 19th century gentleman.
What?
You don't close your eyes.
And a 20th century woman
Well, neither do you.
join forces to capture a criminal from the past at large in the modern world. But even more than they want him, he needs them.
Throw me the key, and I'll release the girl.
On your honor, John.
You have my word as a gentleman. I would have expected that you'd notice by now that I am not a gentleman. Say goodbye.
Goodbye, Herbert.
You haven't instructed him in the use of one of these machines, have you?
HG, it's checkmate, and you've lost again.
A romantic adventure, a breathless chase around the world and across a century. Time after time.
All righty. So, Amber, opening thoughts on Time After Time.
I thought I had watched this, and I think it might be one that like my parents had on a Sunday afternoon, and I was like bopping in and out of the family room and watched pieces of. So this was my really first time watching it, and it was a hoot.
It is absolutely a hoot. That is a great call. How about you, Eric? Any opening thoughts on the film?
I have a few. Yeah, I think I actually saw this in the theater when it came out in 1979. I think it came out on the heels or right before Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Right before. That was going to be Nicholas Meyer's next film. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember
they might have been the same year even. They might have been released the same year. I don't recall.
I remember seeing this in the theater. And I wasn't really sure what was going on because I didn't know a whole lot about H.G. Wells or Jack the Ripper, but I thought it was a fun little time travel movie, and it set me up for all the other time travel movies I would ever watch.
And there are plenty. Yeah, for me, I was looking forward to this movie tremendously. I saw it in 1979. I was a big Jack the Ripper fan at that time. I was really hooked into all those kind of in search of things like Amelia Earhart and the Aztec,
Oh my God! In Search of was like nightmare fuel for me.
Well,
I was
right,
like
but
a little bit younger than you, so like for me, it was all so real. I just was like terrified.
Well, what do you mean? It was so real. It is all real. But
yes.
Didn't Leonard Nimoy actually host a few of those?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So again, the Star Trek circling around this movie big time.
Yeah.
I forgot about the Nimoy connection, but yeah. So I was already a Jack the Ripper fan. I liked H.G. Wells, and I'd already read Nicholas Meyer's first book, The 7% Solution. I liked that one a great deal too. So I was looking forward to this movie, and I was not disappointed. So it's been a favorite ever since for a lot of reasons, and we'll go into that a little bit more when we get to our favorites. But first,
That's the fact, Jack! That's the fact, Jack!
let's talk a little bit about the production of the film. Any film facts, Eric? I think you've got some stuff for us about this movie.
Oh, I do. Going back to Nicholas Meyer, this was his major motion picture directorial debut. The whole movie was shot in 52 days, mostly on location in San Francisco, and had a budget of, hold on to your hats, people, $3.5 million, which is about what Marvel spends on catering. The movie actually was based on a novel by Carl Alexander. It was unfinished at the time, and he approached Nicholas Meyer, and he said, "Hey, could you give me a little, insight on this novel I'm working on? Could you give me some critique?" And Nicholas Meyer immediately fell in love with it and optioned the rights to it so he could write the screenplay and have it be his material. Another fact I looked up today, Rotten Tomatoes score of 88% as of the recording of this podcast. 88% from a 1979 time travel movie, which I think is pretty good.
Yeah, that's hefty. Yeah.
It has a running time of 112 minutes, and it earned $13 million globally at the box office. It was filmed pretty much on location in San Francisco, Golden Gate Park, the Griffith Observatory. Some of the hotel scenes were labeled as the Hyatt, but they were really filmed at the Bonaventure, and you can tell that by those glass elevators that go up and down the outside. The Bonaventure is that classic hotel with that. It's been featured in many, many movies.
Yeah, we did a little silent applause for seeing the elevators. It was like a little cameo by your favorite guest star or something.
Yep.
Like, it's the elevators again. Yeah.
The movie premiered in New York City on August 31st, 1979, and then at the Toronto Film Festival on September 7th, 1979. Initially, Nicholas Meyer wanted to cast Derek Jacobi as H.G. Wells and Edward Fox as John Stevenson, aka Jack the Ripper. But the studio executives didn't like that, and they came back with a counteroffer of Richard Dreyfuss as H.G. Wells and, wait for it, Mick Jagger as Jack the Ripper.
What?
I would have paid to see both those movies, the one with Derek Jacobi and the one with Mick Jagger. I'm sorry, that both of those sound like great alternate versions of this film.
They also offered the role of Amy to Sally Field, but she declined because she was coming off the heels of Smokey and the Bandit, and she wanted to pursue bigger things.
Isn't everything bigger than Smokey and the Bandit?
Now.
Just saying. Anyway.
We don't diss the Bandit.
Oh, you do not diss the Bandit. What is happening here? At one point, Nicholas Meyer wanted to cast his, at the time, girlfriend in the part, but then everyone was like, oh, no, that would be a bad idea. And they landed on Mary Steenburgen.
And he wasn't famous enough to catch his girlfriends. That comes later when you're higher up in the strata. Yeah. I think you can put the girlfriends in. Nice. Anything else for us? I have a few little tidbits I unearthed as well.
No, but I have some trivia.
Oh, hit me. Hit with your trivia.
At the time of the release of the movie, all four of the actual living children of H.G. Wells were still alive at the time of the film's release.
Wow. Well, he died in the 30s or early 40s. So
mid 40s,
46,
like 46,
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not too unusual that his kids were alive, but I couldn't find anything to say whether or not they liked it.
Yeah, I couldn't either. But I found another interesting tidbit that Malcolm McDowell actually listened to an old 78 RPM recording of H.G. Wells to try to get the voice and the character down. But H.G. Wells's voice was really high pitched, and he had sort of a lower class British accent, and he thought he would come off like a Monty Python character. So he decided to up the ante a bit and make him a distinguished proper gentleman.
I like that. I did read that Malcolm McDowell was really upset that he had to wear glasses. He felt that his eyes were his most expressive thing and that he was all about his eye acting. He didn't want to wear glasses, even though H.G. Wells wore glasses. And Nicholas Meyer kind of played into his vanity and said, well, you're going to wear them, but then you're going to take them off. And then it's going to really be something. And then we're really going to get the full effect of the eyes. And McDowell fell for it. So that was how he meant to do that. Did you all know that one of H.G. Wells' grandchildren directed the remake of The Time Machine, which we will be talking about either in the future or the past, depending on whether you're listening to this now or later. But Simon Wells did the remake of Time Machine that came out in 80-something, maybe 90-something. I don't know when it came out.
No, it was like 2000.
It was like 2000.
Was it that late? Whatever.
2002, I think.
Best to be forgotten. But
less said about that, the better.
It's a wibbly wobbly timey wimey thing.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the good one on the other episode. So
exactly.
Oh, now don't go disparaging the remake of The Time Machine. Come on, it had its moments.
No, but moving on. So a couple of fun facts I learned about this. One, the Cyndi Lauper song, Time After Time, she swiped the title from this film. No other part of it, but she read the title somewhere in a magazine and said, that's a great title. I can make a song out of that. And then as she went writing it, she almost took the title out because she didn't like it, but the producers thought it was a great title. So that was one of her first singles with Time After Time, which contextually had nothing to do with the film at all, except that she liked the title. And interesting, the Saturn Awards, or the Science Fiction Film and Television Awards, they're not as quite as zippy as the Oscars, but they're a big deal in the sci-fi world. And the Saturn Awards, this movie got nominated for so many Saturn Awards, and it won almost none. I think it won 3 or 4, but it lost. This kills me. Malcolm McDowell lost the Best Actor Saturn Award to George Hamilton for Love at First Bite.
I'm literally face palming right now.
He also beat out Frank Langella for Dracula and William Shatner for the first Star Trek film. George Hamilton must have, I don't know what he got.
He paid somebody something.
Yeah, and then
you can't go better than Frank Langella in Dracula.
Right,
I'm just
right.
saying.
And then for supporting actor, David Warner was up for supporting actor as Stevenson / Jack, and he lost to R.T. Johnson, also from Love at First Bite. So now our Mary Steenburgen did win for Best Actress, but I think the Saturn Awards.
I must say.
They have some explaining to do, the Saturn Awards, because George Hamilton for Love at First Bite. I mean, whatever. Anyway, but that's my trivia.
I have a little bit for you.
Oh, hit it, Amber.
So eagle-eyed viewers will notice little baby Corey Feldman in his very first movie role as the kid at the museum, and like you spot him immediately. There is no like, is that? Nope, that's him.
It took me out of the film. I was like,
yes.
Like, wait.
Yeah, for sure. And then I loved, if you're also paying attention, the name of the machine, of the time machine, is the Argo, which I loved. I was like, oh my God, that's so awesome.
With bits.
Yes. And then my last little bit in the foot chase scene where Wells is chasing Jack through San Francisco, I was like, David Warner's like, he's running weird. Like, we thought it was because he's so tall that like, does he have to like pace himself for the camera or something? Like, because it just looked weird. Well, it turns out the poor man had 2 broken ankles and was like hobbling and like trying to run, but it was all awkward because he was like being ginger because it was painful. So that explains why as much as I love the chase scene, it was like, what's going on with you?
I didn't notice that. I have to watch again. The chase scene is super fun because they used, I don't know, like 3 or 4 different locations and made it kind of cobble together. Like it looked like it was one big complex. And I spent a lot of time in San Francisco. I lived there one summer when I was in college, and anyway, it's a great town. But I was like, that is not near that, and you cannot get to that building from that building. And they could not have run across. Anyway, it's a great sequence. But if you know the city, you're like, that is false.
I was totally going to ask you about that because I had a feeling that was the situation.
Yeah, did know. Although I loved how much they showed the Palace of Fine Arts, the big kind of World's Fairsy Victorian Edwardian looking building that Mary Steenburgen's character lives near. I used to spend so much time there because it's such a gorgeous building. But anyway, yeah, but the chase scene is spectacular, but geographically it's a little ridiculous. But anyway, all righty.
That was totally wicked!
Let's move along to That Was Totally Wicked, the part of the podcast where we talk about the things we liked about this film. Eric, why don't you hit us with a few things you liked about the movie?
All right, That Was Totally Wicked. Let's start off with Mary Steenburgen has a type.
You think so?
Well, this is now, again, it's a wibbly wobbly timey wimey thing because this is the first time that she fell in love with a crazy scientist who built a time machine in his basement and then realized that he was telling the truth after she shunned him and ended up going back to his time period, which parallels Back to the Future 3, where she was living in the 19th century, fell in love with a crazy old man who built a time machine in his basement. She didn't believe him. She spurned him. And then she realized she was wrong, fell in love with him, and went back to his time in the 20th century. I mean, it is almost verbatim some of the words she says. It's great. Like, you can replace Herbert with Schmidt. So I thought that was actually totally wicked. Actually, Mary Steenburgen gave an interview once where she commented on that and said that it was like just redoing the same scene with different people.
I think they cast her for that reason. I think, if I remember right, when that film came out, they said, wouldn't it be great if we can get her and she can like do the thing in reverse and go from the 19th century to the 20th rather than 20th to 19th? But yeah, that is the fun thing about the movie. Any other things you loved about the movie?
Amber mentioned Corey Feldman. That was awesome because I mean, just in like 6 years, he's going to be a Goonie, and then like 2 years later, he's going to be a vampire hunter. So, I mean, like you said, Robert, that kind of pulled me out a little bit. I was like, oh, that's Corey Feldman.
And then 10 years later, he's washed up in a footnote. But you know,
no, come on, be nice.
What has he done lately?
Well, they had struggles, those children.
I know.
Okay, there was Dream a Little Dream, which wasn't the best, but it was something. I did like the way they redesigned the Time Machine. They didn't make it like the original the Time Machine movie that came before Time After Time. They kind of gave it an update. They kind of made it look like a 70s Prius.
I thought it looked like the Nautilus.
A little bit, yeah.
At least this one had doors and windows.
Yeah,
maybe air conditioning. True. I don't know.
I'm kind of stuck on the sleigh version that we're going to talk about either in the past or the future when we do the episode about Time Machine. But that one to me is the one and only. But this one's a nice little. It's like you said, it's kind of like the Fiat version of the real Time Machine. It's kind of a little around town time machine.
If they'd have waited just 3 more years, they could have made it into a DeLorean.
On to Amber. All right, let's move on to Amber. Amber, what was totally wicked to you? What were things you love about this movie?
I love the opening section in the late 1800s. That's my favorite time period anyway. I love that steampunk. You've got horse-drawn carriages, but then you've got electric lights coming in and all that kind of blending together, that crossing over of technology. I wish there was more of that. I wish there was a little more of a feeling of, the effect that Jack the Ripper was having on the city at the time, and a little bit more of Wells and his buddies. Just because I like that whole section so much. I really, really enjoyed that. I love that foot chase where Wells is chasing Jack through San Francisco. It was really, really well done. And David Warner is just amazing. Like, he is really, I think, underappreciated and is a really, really good Jack the Ripper. Really very interesting.
He'll always be the guy that killed Martin Riggs' wife to me, but okay.
Oh, see, I always, the minute he came on the screen, I was like, Master Control Program.
Yes, exactly. What a career he had. I mean, he was in Titanic. He was in Tron, as you mentioned. He was in Twin Peaks in second season. He was in one of my favorite movies I mentioned on a different episode of the podcast, Providence. It was a very weird art film thing where he played John Gielgud's son, and it was very interesting in that movie. He always plays like the weirdest, coolest people, and he's just so, to your point, Amber, one of my favorite wickeds about the whole thing was the cast. I thought that Malcolm McDowell and David Warner and Mary Steenburgen were all great. And Warner, I just love him, but he never quite was like the star of anything. They would wheel him out and he would be creepy, or he would be sinister, or he would be usually creepy or sinister, but he had range, and he was, if you knew he was in the movie, you knew you were going to see something exciting. Yeah. And I've always enjoyed Malcolm McDowell as well.
See, I struggled with him because A Clockwork Orange messed me up, and I will never get over it. So unless I was okay with him being in Star Trek Generations, because he was the villain, but anything else, if he's not a villain, I don't even know what to do.
But if you go back and look at historical photographs of the time of H.G. Wells when this story would have taken place, he looks like him. He really does.
Yeah, he did a nice job, and I like that he was playing somebody reasonably normal because I mean, yeah, we know him from Clockwork Orange. With he and his droogies are being very creepy, and then he also was the title character in Caligula, the quasi pornographic crazy movie that Gore Vidal wrote, and that I also had mentioned in the seven.
And he was coming off that movie to do Time After Time, and he wanted to do something different.
That families could see. Yeah, but so he had an interesting career for sure. But, yeah, what I liked about McDowell in this, and I thought some of the characterization was a little off, but I really liked both his physicality, the way he moved, and the way he looked at things, and you would see him thinking like, wait, I can find a newspaper, and you could see that thought process in his acting, and then he would go to the newspaper stand and see what year it was, or when he was watching her drive, or some of the things like that. So you got the intelligence there, which was nice, and also the emotion. I thought he did a really nice job. Both he and Warner like rarely play leading men. They usually play the weirdo fringe characters. So it was kind of interesting to have them balanced in this. But yeah, David Warner was spectacular in this. He was just so creepy and so sinister. And what I liked about it, about his character, was they did not really go into much of a backstory about him. We know he's a doctor, and he got that little pocket watch with the picture of the lady inside, and he's, spoiler, Jack the Ripper. But they don't ever do like a flashback or anything to explain to us like what's the watch got to do with it, who's the lady, like any of that. It just all kind of left to the side, and it doesn't matter because he's so compelling. And well,
I think that goes back to the 112-minute running time. Movies back then didn't have the time to explore all of that, and so they had to condense everything to make the story fit in the time frame.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessary. I mean, it worked. It worked perfectly without it. But I thought too it was great watching him shed his Victorian clothes and get into 70s San Francisco, kind of like late hippie gear, just very easily. Which is, I mean, one of his earliest films, he did a 1960s London hippie film, kind of a mod, more mod than hippie, but a film called Morgan that he did that was a kind of a callback to that.
In the same note of what you're saying about how he embraced the century that he was in, when he went to that disco nightclub, I could have imagined John Travolta up on that stage doing his Saturday Night Fever dance while he's sitting in the wings just watching everything happen.
Right. I also really liked the use of San Francisco, even though it was kind of phony, some of it. But just the blending in the city of the very, very modern, like the disco and some of the architecture downtown and the hotels, with the Victorian looking or kind of Edwardian looking Palace of Fine Arts, some of the older buildings. It was a smart choice to use that city because you had a great blend of modern and old kind of commenting back and forth on each other, which I thought was fantastic.
See, I struggled with that because I have a hard enough time with time travel to begin with. And I'm like, and we're moving in space as well. Like,
thank you.
I think we're heading toward no, sir, I didn't like it. I think we made our transition here to things we don't like about it. I thought that worked perfectly well because the idea was they had moved the time machine from Wells's home or wherever it was in London, its stationary spot, and they moved it to the exhibit. So in 2000 and whatever, or 1979, when the film was taking place, that's where the time machine was at that time. It wasn't still sitting in one place. It had physically moved. So it moved in time and space.
Take that much time out of my viewing to figure out like how the hell did we get to San Francisco?
Oh, I totally got it. When they went to a museum, I was like, okay, so they brought it over from England, and it's where it is now. And since he came to now, that's where he came.
It took me an extra minute.
I bought that better than I bought from Time Machine. The whole like a mountain is formed over you, and the time machine is not crushed or melted.
Well, we're going to talk about that on another episode.
Yeah,
Save it.
either
Build to that.
I guess it's lucky that the time machine didn't end up in a landfill in Poughkeepsie.
Exactly, exactly.
No, sir, I didn't like it.
So no, sir, I didn't like it. Amber, looks like you are starting that one for us.
Oh,
So what else
okay.
did you not like about this movie?
Well, I have a list.
Oh, wow.
Although
Okay.
I did enjoy it. It's a fun little thing. Like, it's fine. But like, thinking critically, I felt like there were too many rules for the time machine. Like, you have this key that does this, and you have this key that does that. And if you're in it, you're okay. But if you're out of it, you're not. But then you can still travel, but not be in it. And I don't know. I don't like time travel. So the less rules, the more simple, the better for me. And then building on that, how in the heck does Mary Steenburgen see in the newspaper that she's dead if she's in the future? She wasn't there to be killed, so she can't be dead.
Time travel paradoxes are a bitch, and they
are. It's
like
awful.
yourself. I will be shaking my fist and screaming at the TV often when there's time travel. And Stephen just said, "Just go with it." But so I don't know. I have no answer for that. But I just kind of went with it and said, okay, that's what they're doing. They're doing that. So how far are we on your list of don't like? So
I just have a couple more.
Go ahead. No, I've got a few as well. I like this movie a lot, but I have a few as well. So
okay.
I'm sure Eric's got a couple to chime in.
I did not like the time travel sequence. I love the time travel sequence in the time machine. Which we'll go into that on the other episode. But this one was just like, I found a toy that makes rainbows and prisms, and I don't know, it just was stupid.
I am right there with you on that. That's one of mine as well. And all I kept thinking was from a year or two earlier, Bedknobs and Broomsticks. Because the Bedknobs and Broomsticks also did the little, like, let's use the prism filter on our camera and make little sparklies on everything.
But like, it was a cartoon, you know? It was okay.
Yeah. I know we weren't quite to CGI, but holy cow. I mean, Star Wars had already come out. So, I mean.
Right. And they were 100% stealing from 2001: A Space Odyssey. So just go ahead and steal the good stuff.
Yeah.
Like, don't steal the idea and not the execution.
Gotcha.
You know? So there was that. And then another theft, like, what was the cab ride from Bullet about? Like, I was looking for Steve McQueen, and
a friend of mine made an edit of this film and Bullet, and then What's Up Doc with What's Up Doc with Streisand, where they have the bicycle and the I guess it's like an ice cream cart thing they're riding, and and he edited it all together and made all the shenanigans happen at once. I will see if I can get him to put it on YouTube and we can refer to it. But yeah.
Please.
Well, Malcolm McDowell did say, "Take me to the Hyatt as fast as you can."
Yeah.
So enter the crazy cab driver trope.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I kept flashing back to the Streets of San Francisco, which was a cop show that was on with Michael Douglas and Carl Malden around that same time, where the cabs or police cars just jumping over the hills and crashing down and zooming away, and yeah.
And then just a couple more things, like the music cues sound like the Ten Commandments.
Oh, Amber Lewis, you are reading my list. You got special effects, you got music. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Like, literally, when something dramatic happens, it totally sounds like when something dramatic happens in the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, and it's also like I mean, Miklos Rozsa, I'm not a fan of his scores anyway. Give me Max Steiner, give me John Williams. Rozsa wrote like so many scores, but this one, it was like the doorknob would be turning and it would be like 200 trombones playing all at once. It's like, it's a doorknob, settle down. Like all the music was too much, too loud, too like, it's going to be scary now. You watch, it's going to be scary, before it even is scary. Yeah. The music was atrocious. I agree. But it was a big get to get him because he was a legendary film composer at that time, and I think it was one of the last films he worked on. So I mean, he had his own title card and everything. He was a big deal, but yeah, I'm with you. It was just bloated and too much and too big and all that for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then my last thing is I usually love Mary Steenburgen, but this weird like New York accent that she was doing, like it made her sound like she was developmentally delayed. Like, are you stupid?
Do you think it's New York accent? I was getting like weird off Southern or something.
Well,
I couldn't,
because she's from Arkansas, so like normally she just has kind of a Southern tinge to everything she says. But I felt like it was like when English actors try to do American and they're not that great at it, you get New York a lot.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it felt like. And I'm like, is she supposed to be dumb? You know, I just wasn't sure like what we were going for with her. And I felt like it was the accent that was throwing everything off.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. I didn't mind it or notice it at all. I mean, it didn't sound, it sounded, I mean, she has a weird voice anyway. I mean, when she's being herself, her voice is very soft and very kind of weird and all that. I mean, anyway, are you all?
I'm done.
Okay. Eric, any no-sirs for you?
Oh, yes. So, in the words of the Princess Bride, I do not have time to explain, so I will sum up.
All right.
First of all, Amy hits on this guy who comes into her bank like way too hard, way too fast. Here's some weirdo who's asking about people exchanging money, and all of a sudden she's like, "Ooh, would you like me to show you around town? Would you like to come over to my house and stay there while I'm at work?" I mean, that was a little weird. The other thing that I didn't like about this was when Amy, Mary Steenburgen's character, suggests to H.G. Wells that he should get a gun, and he says, "No, we're going to solve this like gentlemen." And I'm thinking, Jack the Ripper is not playing by gentlemen's rules. So that was a little weird for me. Another thing that I thought was weird was when Amy realizes that she is going to be brutally murdered in her apartment at 7:00 at night. She just lays down and casually takes a nap. You know, like, maybe I'll wake up in time. Maybe I won't. Who knows? And of course she doesn't. And then she forgets to tell her friend who she invited for dinner, her friend Carol, who shows up and gets murdered in her place, like worst dinner host ever.
I got to say though, that was the great fake out, because the first time I saw that movie, I had completely forgotten that Carol got invited for dinner Friday. It was one of those great little things. They just slipped in, and I had forgotten about it. And I was like, "Oh dear God, they killed Mary Steenburgen!" Like what? Yeah, Amy dead. But I thought that was a great kind of bait and switch moment, because just in that reaction time, if it was so shocking.
If you've ever actually followed the history of Jack the Ripper, his final murder, these were all Whitechapel prostitutes. The last murder that Jack the Ripper actually committed was so brutal that they couldn't even really identify the body, other than they knew who was living there at the time, which sort of parallels this movie, that the innocent Carol who got invited over for, salad and brisket got chopped up. There were some other things that Amber already touched on this about the whole time travel thing, about place and time and space. The Earth rotates on an axis. The Earth then rotates around the sun. The sun and the solar system rotate around the local cluster. The local cluster in the Milky Way is also rotating. So if you travel an hour in the future, you might end up out in space or maybe on the moon. Who knows?
Gravity, come on, keep up. I mean,
Interstellar explained all of this.
We have to allow at least that time travel is a storytelling device, because it has been one forever and ever. And one day we're going to feel dumb when everyone time traveling all over the place, and we're not. But anyway.
Well, this is where Neil deGrasse Tyson needs to step into the podcast and explain things to us.
Maybe he'll comment. Check back, listeners, and see if Neil commented on this episode. Um, I don't have a lot to add to what you guys said. I felt my biggest disappointment, because I haven't watched this in probably five or more years, and I'd seen it several times prior to that. It looked so dated. It looked like something from the 70s. It looked like a bad TV episode of the 70s. Just, I can't place it because it wasn't, I mean, they could have done it as a period piece set in San Francisco in the 70s, but somehow it just looked kind of dated. I don't know if it's the lighting or the cinematography or whatever, but it just looked like kind of a cheesy TV show from that era.
Well,
and
Can I add one
Yeah.
thing to that? This was another thing on my list. This was a time when there were no cell phones and there was no internet, but we all take that so much for granted. When I watched this movie, one of my thoughts was like, well, just, look at Google on your cell phone and figure out where to go. But you couldn't do that back then. And the scary thing is I was alive when there was no cell phone or internet.
Yeah, likewise. Well, I just felt like it looks. I mean, there are movies from the 70s that look at Jaws. It doesn't look dated, and there's just something. Because I think it is just archetypal, and it's filmed high budget and all that. And this, it just looked kind of low budget and just.
It kind of feels like the movie Halloween. Like Jamie Lee Curtis famously bought her wardrobe at JCPenney for like $50.
Yeah.
And this kind of has that same kind of patina to it.
And to your point, I love the location stuff, but especially Wells's house and like especially his basement or the storeroom when they go in and are looking for the time machine and it's not there and all that. That looked like a cheap set, like on a soundstage, like bring in some stuff, just put it around. Like we're not even going to bother to actually like attach the molding to the floor or whatever. The first 15, 20 minutes, the movie looked really cheap and low budget, which was a shame because once they get to
That's
San
really
Francisco,
where you could have thrown the money.
Right.
And go back to the $3.5 million production budget.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Well, it looked like a made-for-TV movie, a lot of it to me, which was disappointing. 'Cause for the content, I think is superior to that, but just not the look of it. Amber mentioned the special effects. Holy cow. Yeah, they were not great. And then not only were they not great, but they went on and on and on like they were great. And they were not great. Like I would have just been like, okay, here we are. Like, don't linger on the little, like, multiple.
Like seriously, I would have wanted to see like the close-up of like a clock with the minute and hour hand rotating quickly or something
give me
like
something.
that. Yeah.
You know what it reminded me of? The first day of my new tone. It reminded me of Star Trek 4, that whole time travel sequence with the sculptures coming up through the smoke and the prismatic effects. It reminded me of that.
Was that one of the ones Nicholas Meyer directed? Because he directed a lot of Star Trek films.
It was the Search
he
for Whales
definitely
one.
wrote for the Voyage Home. He might.
Yeah.
No, Leonard Nimoy directed it, so he wrote it.
Leonard Nimoy directed that one, but the time travel scenes reminded me a lot of Star Trek 4, and I have some other mentions to that later.
Okay, well, we are definitely dogging on this poor movie, and I think we started off.
No, but you're right, Amber. It was a fun movie to watch. I mean, it really was.
Yeah, we had a great time.
Well, with that, we're going to take a little promo break.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men?
Turn your dial to find the frequency of the past.
Captain Advice.
Where the classic stories of mysteries, sci-fi, thrillers, and suspense are found waiting to be heard once again.
Another case for Nick Carter, Master Detective.
You'll find a variety of those stories here, in their original form, where each episode takes you to another place or time.
The Man of Bronze, Doc Savage.
But only when you find the mystery frequency. Available everywhere.
The shadow knows.
Why are you smiling like that?
I just like to smile. Smiling's my favorite.
Make work your favorite. That's your favorite, okay?
Okay.
Work is your new favorite.
Fine.
All righty. So if you thought we hated the film, we really don't. We all liked it. So we're going to move on to Smiling's My Favorite and talk about some of our favorite parts of the film. So we will start with favorite character, and I will just randomly go with Eric.
Oh, okay. Well, this will reveal the sort of weird dark side of me, but I like John Leslie Stevenson. I like Jack the Ripper. I thought he was a great time travel character because, unlike H.G. Wells, he adapted to the time period he was in. He found a nice swanky hotel. He got a shave. He bought a nice suit with the, wing tab collars and and he blended right in with 1970. He could have fit right into 1979 New York. This could have happened in New York, San Francisco, interchangeable. But I think my favorite character was Jack the Ripper, and of course, second, Corey Feldman. Come on.
Boy in Museum, or whatever his character
Boy
is.
in Museum, yes.
Yes. What a career he had. All righty. How about you, Amber? Favorite character?
I completely agree with Eric. It was Jack the Ripper for me. To his point, Jack is a predator, so of course he's going to be able to assimilate to his surroundings better than this kind of nebbishy, nerdy kind of writer guy. So I liked that about him, and I liked, part of the lore of Jack the Ripper is, of course, nobody knows who he really was, and a lot of theories are, that he was a doctor that maybe worked for the royal family or something like that. So you could see how he could have been this guy, that was part of kind of the upper middle class of London, and just had this sinister hobby that he was indulging in.
Look, I have hobbies. I build model airplanes. I don't kill people in dark alleys.
I said the word though, sinister.
There's a difference between a hobby and a, socio-psychopathic fetish.
I don't know. It's a fine line sometimes. I know some hobbyists who are out there. I'm just saying. My favorite character, although I enjoyed both Wells and the Ripper, I didn't think that either one of them were really developed a lot. We just kind of went with he's the Ripper and he's the nerdy, nebbishy.
You kind of had to know who they were to begin with.
Yeah, and so my favorite character, especially on this viewing, was Amy. I thought she was a breath of fresh air. I love Mary Steenburgen anyway, and this was only her second film. And then she won an Oscar for her third movie, Melvin and Howard, a year later. But she just was quirky and real. And I mean, she had to sell a lot of hard stuff. Like, I'm going to believe that he really time travels, and I'm going to go in my apartment and see my best friend's been murdered. And I'm going to do, she had to sell a lot of stuff. And I thought she was real. She was quirky. I really just enjoyed her performance. And to your point, Eric, about how she was hitting on HG in the bank, you were not in San Francisco in the 1970s. I'm just telling you that that totally would have and could have happened. And I thought it made her more modern and more. I mean, her whole point of her character, I mean, she talked about how she is self-sufficient and she is modern and she does things on her own. And I thought it was believable. And I just pretty much all
and if
of
it
her
was a man, nobody would have thought anything about it.
And that would kind of also the great subtext of her character was, here it is, the late 1970s, and she is still fighting for women's equality, how she had to fight to get her job and fight to get a promotion. And she's explaining that these two men, where at that time the women were the wives, the mistresses, or the whores, and so, but it's like, okay, and it's 100 years later, and the women haven't advanced at all. Okay, good one. And I thought she's embodied a very realistic, modern, smart young woman who was on her own and trying to kind of figure it out, because it was different then than it is now, and certainly was different from the Victorian era. But everything about her character I found really appealing, and I mainly that she was so genuine. She was also gorgeous in this movie. I don't think she was ever prettier. She just looked stunning and beautiful in this movie, which was nice to watch.
To follow up on your statement, do you think that, let's say, off screen, that she hit on Jack the Ripper when he came in first to turn in all those bills?
I don't think so, because I think because we had that little bit of conversation with
You think
with
she's a
her
better
with
judge of
Carol.
character than that?
Well, she said to Carol, like, I don't know why, like, Carol, her friend, teases her and says, like, God, you totally hit on him. And she's like, and she thought he was kind of cute and kind of helpless. And obviously, I don't think that Stevenson, it was cute or helpless necessarily. He was kind of scary and menacing. But so even that, I mean, it was not a documentary. The time travel movie about Jack the Ripper was not a documentary. And so, but
it wasn't? What? Oh,
yeah, I know. I bought into her character, and I thought she took a part that could have been just the blonde bimbo actress that they put in, or something, and made it believable and convincing. And she was very much of her time, which I liked. Moving on, let's move on to our favorite scene. This time around, we'll start with you, Eric. What's your favorite scene in the movie?
Well, I'm going back to what I said again about Star Trek 4. And when H.G. Wells...
so it had to be from this movie. It had to be from this movie.
Now, hold on now. Wait, just give me a minute. I'm
okay.
Circle around to my point. Just everybody tune in and stay focused. When he arrives in San Francisco and he's like a fish out of water and he's running around and he's asking people, what city am I in? Where am I? Again, it kind of took me back to Star Trek 4 when Chekhov was like, I need to find the nuclear vessels. It was in San Francisco again. So apparently Nicholas Meyer has a love of San Francisco, but that was one of my favorite scenes, was when he first arrived and he just had to figure everything out as fast as he could. And it was that typical fish out of water. What is this amazing new future? Wait a minute. It's not the utopia I thought it was, but let's, improvise, adapt, and overcome and see what we can make of it. And so that, I think, was my favorite scene, was him trying to figure out everything in the beginning and his logical method that he used. He realized that Jack the Ripper, was going to have his same problems about exchanging money and currency. So where would you go? A bank. And he systematically went through all the banks until he came to the Bank of London. And that's when the light bulb went off. And so I thought that was that whole build up to how he became sort of Sherlock Holmes when he lied to the police and said, I'm Sherlock Holmes. I really thought that was well done. And that was, I think, my favorite scene, is that beginning where he was learning how to adapt to 100 years in the future that he had no idea about how to adapt to.
That was a great sequence. I had the one quibble, and I laughed, but I still hated it and hated myself for laughing. But when he goes into McDonald's with the hideous product placement, but then puts on the fake like Bubba accent when he's ordering his food.
Like you had to order it that way.
He would have known better. I just thought that was like kind of.
Did you pick up on later on? He said he ate at some Scottish place.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was great fantastic, though, because he was doing I want a Big Mac and a fry, but I'd like a tea.
Yeah, yes. I laughed, but I also thought that was a joke at the expense of the character, because to your point, he was far too smart to know that. I mean, he knew what America was. He knew that San Francisco was a city. He probably could have figured out he didn't have to use, some Bubba accent. But anyway, yeah, the beginning sequence was great with him learning. Even with his glasses on, his eyes told the whole story.
One last thing. I love the part in the beginning of the movie when he was collecting jewelry and money, and he literally took the earrings off of his housekeeper. Like, I'm going to need these too.
Yoink. Yeah, that was fantastic. How about you, Amber? Favorite scene?
Strictly because this got the biggest reaction out of, I watched this with Liam and Jessica, and the three of us were all shouting at the television. The scene, Amy falls asleep and H.G. Wells gets taken off to jail. And then all of a sudden the camera pans over to the door and the three of us shouted like, he didn't slam the door.
It's Chekhov's door.
Yes. And that whole sequence, of her realizing she's in trouble and hiding in the closet, because like, where are you going to go in a little apartment, which always freaks me out in movies. And then him coming in and looking around, and then you get that great reveal later on. I love that sequence. I thought it was really well done.
I did too. What was funny, after we watched it, Steven said to me, he goes, "Do you think she was in the closet the whole time her friend was murdered?" I know, right? That was my reaction.
Oh my God,
I was
think so.
She might, because she probably wouldn't have left till after Ripper left. So, but I was like, now I'm nauseated and sad and never want to watch this movie again.
Right.
I mean, you're talking about trauma. But anyway, yeah, that was a great scene. I loved so many of the characters in this. The actors portrayed intelligence really well.
Mm-hmm.
There was no dialogue, but you could see the thought process and the, oh crap, and I have to move, and whatever, you know, and all of them did that really well at different points in the film, which I liked. My favorite scene, I kind of, there were two that kind of circled around each other, but the both involved Steenburgen and Wells, and I loved the lunch scene where she's just going on, and she's flirting, and she's like talking to him, and she has this like, I don't know how many pages of script to go through. And he's basically like looking out the window going like, ooh, revolving restaurant. Ooh, look at the Golden Gate Bridge. Like, he is not even really listening to her. And she's like pouring her heart out and kind of babbling like you do on a first date and all this stuff. And it just was a great little character study moment where he's just like, barely paying attention, and she's just like so excited she can like spill everything she's ever thought, and it was just a delightful scene and a real tour de force for Steenburgen. But I also really liked the other time they're together, where toward the end, where he is trying to convince her that the time travel is real, because I bought that she was not believing this, and he was trying so hard, and that moment when she comes out of the thing and she's like heartbroken, because she's like, I gave my heart to this guy, let him stay in my apartment. He's a loony. He's just another jerk. Oh my God, I've done it again. This whole thought process of like her dating life is a shambles, and you know, whatever. And then maybe I'm projecting anyway, but she but then all of a sudden she goes out into the lobby and she picks up that newspaper, and that's another moment where it kind of like when they show the door not latched, where you're just like, when you see the newspaper, it's like gasp worthy. It's great. So that in the lunch scene, but comic scene, dramatic scene, I picked one of each. But
the lunch scene killed me, because she says at one point, like, I babble when I'm nervous, and I do that, and I was like, oh my God, is this what I sound like?
Yeah, but the whole time he's like, oh, look over there, seagull. You know, he's like he's not even listening to her. It just
right.
a great little comic scene, but it shows character so much. He's observing and learning and all that. He's still smitten with her, but he can't turn off that science part of his brain that is registering new information and data to use later. And then she's just like babbling, and you know, anyway, great scene. Alrighty, so now the $1 million question for our smiling my favorite category. What is your favorite time travel film or show, Amber? I will throw it to you this time. And I know you hate time travel, you said, so this is going to be a fun to hear.
Time travel is 100% bullshit. But having said that, partly because it's the one that I really feel like is plausible, but also just for all the feels, Somewhere in Time.
I knew you were going to say that.
I knew you knew.
Or maybe you're going to say it in the future, and I already heard you.
That's right.
Anyway.
Because we're doing the time machine, and so we're already backwards.
Yeah. That is a good one.
It's just one of the best tearjerker romances ever, and I really kind of feel like you could self-hypnotize yourself, where maybe you don't actually travel, but you could probably convince yourself that you did. Like, there are memories that I have that are so strong, like you could smell the room that you were in, you could you know, remember the taste of the food, and you know what I mean. And I think if you concentrated that energy, maybe it would be possible.
Have you read any of Jack Benny's books? He wrote the book that Somewhere in Time was based on, and he was basically known for time travel. He wrote short stories, he wrote a few novels. They're all great. If you haven't read him, I will lend you one of
I've
his books.
got Somewhere in Time, and I've got there's like a sequel, like Elisa's Story or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Did
I've
he
got
write that
both
one,
of
or
those.
yeah, because he wrote in like the 50s and 60s, I think, primarily, but he wrote a bunch of time travel stuff, and they're great books. They really are fun. But yeah, Somewhere in Time is classic. That is such a great movie. And your friend Christopher Reeve.
Yes.
In Somewhere in Time, Christopher Reeve actually found the ledger from the hotel and saw his name there. So it wasn't just in his imagination.
Oh, no, he physically went. I'm saying, though, in the real world, and not the movie world.
Oh, okay.
I think in the real world, that's probably the most plausible time travel scenario.
Funny, I've had that experience. You were talking about kind of sense memory. I've had that with like kind of with deja vu, where I go to places and I'm like, I have been here before. I mean, occasionally, definitely it was weird when Stephen and I went to England a few years ago. I would like, he'd say like, oh, isn't there so-and-so? And I'd be like, oh, it's right around the corner. And like, we would go around the corner and there it was. And we've never been to England at that point. But like, I just like, it was very
remember,
weird.
I mean, that girl did point out that you're a ghost. So.
She thought I was a ghost. Yeah, so that is true. But anyway, how about you? How about you, Eric? A favorite time travel TV show or film?
I have two. I'll start with my favorite time travel TV show, Quantum Leap, the original Scott Bakula.
My goodness, yes. I loved that show.
Yeah,
I forgot about that one.
I liked the remake, but the original Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell show just holds a place in my heart. And as far as my favorite time travel movie, 12 Monkeys.
Oh, also good.
Dayton will be so happy.
The 12 Monkeys.
Also
That's my favorite.
Very nice.
Robert, what's yours?
I'd forgotten Quantum Leap. That's really great.
I know. I was torn not picking Lost.
Oh, also good. Oh my gosh, I didn't even consider that as like a time travel thing, even though it absolutely is. Plug. Amber and I will be doing Lost episodes in 2025. Stay tuned. But no, mine, I think, because we just came off of, or just we'll be getting into the Time Machine, one way or the other, was in the 1960s, there was a TV show called Time Tunnel. It only lasted one season. I saw a couple episodes when I was really young and didn't remember them. And then they put out a DVD set later, and I went, I remember this. And it was like two guys in a government mission, and they would travel through time. And of course, they hit the Titanic and the Alamo, and, they never went to somebody's, birthday party. It was always like giant world events. But I mean, a fun fact about that was that Whit Bissell, who appears in The Time Machine, was the leader of the government agency that was putting this giant time machine thing on. But Time Tunnel was super, super fun. I'm a sucker for time travel stuff. And like yourself, Amber, I scream at the TV and go, you broke your own rule, damn it. But I still
enjoy it.
Right, exactly. All right, so moving on, we're going to do a little bit more Smiling's my favorite because it's my episode I'm hosting, so it's my rules, as you've all learned by now. So we have a few bonus questions here in the Smiling's my favorite. So, Amber, I'll start again with you this time. Favorite Jack the Ripper on TV or film?
Okay, so I'm cheating a little bit because I haven't actually seen this one, but the idea of it is so good that if I can ever find it, like, I'm sure it's going to be fabulous. There is a movie called Murder by Decree.
Oh, it's great.
Is it good? Christopher
really good.
Plummer plays Sherlock Holmes. James Mason is Watson. Donald Sutherland's in it somewhere. Like, holy cow. I cannot wait to find a copy of this somewhere.
A few years where there were so many great Victorian movies. Sutherland was also in The Great Train Robbery, with which I love, the Michael Crichton thing with Sean Connery. And I there was like a good 5 or 6 years where everything Victorian was going on. I was all about my frock coats and top hats. I was so into all those movies. But yeah, Murder by Decree is really great. I have not seen it probably since it came out, but I remember loving it a lot. Good one. How about you, Eric? Favorite Jack the Ripper appearance in a TV show or film?
Oh, absolutely. From Hell, Johnny Depp.
That movie is so good.
Yeah, they really did. Of course, they had to fictionalize it to add to the drama, but the way they linked it to the royal family and the prostitute having an illegitimate baby, those were actual theories that had been floated about Jack the Ripper. And I think hands down that From Hell with Johnny Depp is my favorite Jack the Ripper movie set in the Victorian era.
Nice. Well, my favorite, and spoiler alert coming, so skip ahead a minute or two if you're listening and don't want spoilers. This is from a film I actually mentioned in my top 7 of the 70s episode, The Ruling Class. I love that movie tremendously, and Peter O'Toole briefly portrays Jack the Ripper in that movie, and is absolutely bone-chilling and creepy and just sensational. Although I gotta say, David Warner gives him a run for his money in this film. I mean, that the line, it's in the trailer, it's on the box, it's everywhere about like, here I'm just an amateur. I mean, good heavens, that just makes my flesh crawl. And then, as we're having CEOs shot down on Park Avenue and all these things going on still. But yeah, Peter O'Toole in Ruling Class, favorite Jack the Ripper. We'll circle back. So let's go back to H.G. Wells. Favorite appearance of H.G. Wells as a character, because he shows up a lot. If you don't have one, that's okay too. I'm going to start with you this time, Eric.
This was hard to figure out because, and Amber is going to vehemently disagree with me, but my favorite H.G. Wells appearance in a movie was the modern remake of The Time Machine, which you poo-pooed, and I'm sure you have your reasons, but okay.
What?
Did you have a brain tumor for breakfast?
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Let's hold on. That's my favorite movie appearance.
Dayton, I'm gonna need you to insert like all of the exclamatory sound effects that you've got in your little magic bag.
Yeah. Amber and I are both rolling our eyes so far back in our head we can't even almost like see anymore. But
all right. You know what? I'll take the hits. I'm an adult.
We totally value your opinion, Eric.
Now, I'm not sure if this is real. This could be a Mandela effect, but there was a show when I was growing up back in the 80s called Voyagers. Not Star Trek Voyager, but Voyagers. It had John Eric Hexum, and he played a time traveler who picked up this kid who was a history buff, and they had to go back in time and set things right. And I swear there was an episode where they met H.G. Wells, and he wanted to be like a painter or something. And they put him on the track to being a writer. And I don't know if I'm imagining this. So anybody out there in the audience who knows about this show, please let me know. But I do remember an episode of this show where they met H.G. Wells and had to put him back on the right track.
Fantastic. Now I'm going to have to start Googling after that. I don't even recall the show.
I remember the show, but I don't remember specific episodes.
I'm going to look for it. That's a good one. Thank you for that. I wrote that down. Thank you for the shout out. So H.G. Wells, he's in everything. And I had a couple honorable mentions. I thought about, although he doesn't strictly speaking appear, but the movie Tomorrowland that Amber and I did an episode about.
You didn't give me my turn. That was mine.
Oh, was it? Well, okay. Oh, I'll go to you next. So he was an honorable mention for me, so I'll just glide over that. I also love Jeremy Irons, even though he was in the dog version of Time Machine. But he did a character called, he did Wells in a film called Timekeeper at the Disney parks for a little while. That wasn't around. But my favorite, more spoilers. So again, jump ahead by a minute, listeners. H.G. Wells appears in one of my favorite goofy TV shows, Warehouse 13. And I don't want to say much more about Wells's character in that show because I don't want to spoil it too much. But my favorite Wells after Time would be from Warehouse 13. And now back to you, Miss Amber. Tell us all about Tomorrowland.
No, in Tomorrowland, you find out that H.G. Wells was a founding member of Plus Ultra.
Yeah.
When they go into the Eiffel Tower, and it's not like a huge, moment, but it fits so well with, just the overarching lore of the story. that I just love that so much.
All right.
And anytime we
was
can
great.
shout out Tomorrowland.
And we have an episode about that, listeners. So find it and listen to it because it's a good episode. It was a great film. So my last question was kind of an out there question, even for me, partly because it's a thing I love a lot. I phrased it as your favorite What If They Met show or movie. I am a sucker for books or movies where historical or fictional characters cross paths. I'm just a big fan of those. And there's so many. And in fact, a lot of them are time travel. You were talking about Quantum Leap earlier, where all of a sudden our hero is there with Martin Luther King, and then he's over there with Henry VIII, and, all these things. They're not always time travel, though. Nicholas Meyer, who did this film, his first book and his first real claim to fame was the Sherlock Holmes film and book, The 7% Solution, which was fantastic, had an amazing cast, but the setup was that Watson was trying to get Holmes, played by Nicol Williamson from Excalibur, who we've also done an episode about. But Nicol Williamson is Holmes, and Watson is trying to get him to see Sigmund Freud to cure him of his cocaine addiction. So Holmes and Freud meet up, and then the shenanigans go, and there's a mystery in all this. So that's one of my favorite What If They Met, but I love that genre anyway. And of course, you've all been waiting. It's been a long time into the episode, but here we go. My Broadway reference. Ding, ding, ding. Here we go. In the 7% Solution, besides having Vanessa Redgrave and Nicol Williamson and Robert Duvall and this amazing Alan Arkin, this amazing cast, great Nicholas Meyer script, Stephen Sondheim wrote a song for the movie. He did not write a lot of film songs. This one he did. He wrote a song for a high-class madam in a brothel called I Never Do Anything Twice. And they just kind of stopped the movie for about 3 minutes so she can sing this raunchy, witty song. My favorite, a little bit of lyrics, she's talking about how this abbot asked her to have relations with him. And she says, well, and remember, she never does anything twice. She says, I'll get in the habit, but not in the habit. Anyway, little nun joke there. It's all going on. It's a hilarious, raunchy Stephen Sondheim song. So there's your Broadway reference out of the way for the episode. But after 7% Solution, which I had to shout out mainly because of Nicholas Meyer, my favorite What If They Met show by far is Doctor Who. Because in his time travels, he meets everybody. I've got to call out the Vincent Van Gogh episode.
Damn it! That's the one I had.
Oh, was it? Okay, great. And well, I'll let you go on about it. But yeah, the 11th Doctor, and it is just off the charts for a historical person with fictional person. If you think the Doctor is fictional, I think he's real. But I will turn it over to Amber so you can run with this then, since it's your baby.
Well, it's absolutely, there are Doctor Who episodes that are, just fun and funny and, silly or whatever. And then there are Doctor Who episodes that absolutely reach in your chest and rip your heart right out. And this one, I can't even hardly talk about it without crying. You get to the end and it's just so unbelievable. And it's hands down, in my opinion, the best Doctor Who episode out of all of them.
I'm right there with you. And it's funny, I was reading about it in getting ready for this, and I had forgotten, or maybe I didn't know, that it was written by Richard Curtis, who wrote Love Actually and so many great British comedies and tearjerkers, and sometimes both. And I was like, oh, that totally makes sense that he wrote this. It wasn't one of the usual Who suspects. Not that they're not great, but yeah.
But just having someone, I think, fresh and new in there, and just the ending just shatters you. It just absolutely shatters you. And that absolutely was my favorite. I also wanted to give a shout out to in Night at the Museum too. And I'm such a sap. I cry at everything. The part where Amelia Earhart meets the Tuskegee Airmen.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Tears every time. I'm like, ah! I can't hold it together. And then we're back to laughing at Ben Stiller and the monkey, and it's fine. But that moment is really classy.
Oh my gosh, and I'm so deep into into the Van Gogh episode now. I've forgotten. Eric, did we get you to tell us what your What If They Met was, or
Nope,
am I
but
just blank? Go ahead then. I'll get Van Gogh and the tears out of my mind.
all right. So imagine a movie where Billy the Kid meets Socrates, and then they meet Abraham Lincoln, and then they meet Napoleon. And of course, I am talking about the best What If They Met movie ever, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Excellent Adventure. Yep. See, it's a great genre. I just get such a kick out of those. Well, you can win for best comic episode, and Amber and I'll hug the most emotional episode, and so we have both bases covered there with that. That is fantastic. And of course, over this recap, we've been talking about so many previous podcast episodes we've done. I feel like I'm time traveling myself as we're talking about
I know.
Tomorrowland, and we're talking about this one and this one. Anyway, all right, we're gonna bring this on home. We're gonna hop in our time machines and dial back to right now.
Can I dial in my time machine till Christmas Day when I'm not at work?
Oh yeah, let's all leap in there. If you've got room for all of us, we'll hitchhike with you.
All right, good.
Of course, the irony is our listeners are listening to this in January, so Christmas is in their past, even though it's in our future. Are we time traveling? I don't know. Final words. Amber Lewis, can you give us any final thoughts and a rating of 1 to 5 film reels for this movie?
It's definitely, if you're doing like a time travel movie marathon and you want to throw in something new, I guarantee you haven't seen this, and it is an absolute hoot. So pop it in and have a good time. I give it 3 film reels.
Fair. How about you, Eric?
Well, it like Amber said, it is a good, fun time travel movie, but you have to understand that it is dated. It was made in the 70s. The special effects aren't that great, but I really like the story about what if Jack the Ripper came to modern times and then was chased by H.G. Wells, aka Sherlock Holmes. It's a fun movie. And I'm so glad that we did this episode because it gave me a chance to watch it again and experience it again. And I'm going to give it 4 film reels.
Nice. I'm leaning toward Amber again this episode. We've been kind of twinsies, which is not like us. But I'm going to say a 3 also. I think if it was better executed, it would be a 4 for me, maybe even a little higher. But it just... to your point, just kind of the budget and some of the effects and some of the datedness of it, you got to kind of be in the right mindset for it. You can't just spring it on somebody and say, this is the best movie ever, watch this, because they're going to think you're nuts. So I'll give it a solid 3. We have some terrific upcoming episodes continuing this Science Fiction Through the Decades series. We did it last year and you all liked it so well. We're doing it again this year. Tonight we were talking about a film from the 70s. Next time it's going to be The Dark Crystal from 1982. And because January is a long month, we're going to do one more mashup of 50s versus 80s with the original The Thing and the remake of The Thing. Coming up down the road, we're going to do another month-long tribute, this time to Disney Through the Decades. We picked out films from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. We want you, our listeners, to help us pick our 1970s best Disney animated film. There'll be a poll available on our social media and Patreon. We want to hear from you, get your votes on what you think is the best Disney film of the 1970s, and we will do our episode about that for you. I want to thank my guest tonight, the always reliable Amber Lewis.
Oh, thank you, buddy. It was a hoot.
Yeah, no one cried though. I mean,
I got choked up a little bit.
You did, but we didn't get like full Amber. But it was still fun. And thank you so much, Eric. I love your goofy insights and your fun facts about everything. Thank you for being on tonight.
No, thank you for having me back again.
Absolutely. And of course, we want to thank our listeners most of all. Without you, we're just talking to ourselves. I do that enough already. I don't need to do it live on the air. But thank you all listeners for that. And we would love to hear your thoughts on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Blue Sky. Share the podcast with your friends, rate and review us, and join Patreon for special exclusives. We have special episodes and other fun features there. Recently, we've had reviews of Yesterday and Spirited Away just for our Patreon members. And of course, as always, speaking for myself, I'm Robert, and for, of course, the Docking Bay 77 family, watch more movies, and physical media is always better. Thanks, everybody.
The Docking Bay 77 podcast is produced and edited by Dayton Johnson, recorded with Rode Pod mics, the Zoom PodTrack P4, and edited on Audacity. Opening music provided by Eric Jason Brock. You can find him on YouTube and Bandcamp. Thank you for listening.
Amber, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. The attic access is like right over my head, and a spider like this big was dropping down and going to like land on my head. So I had to like text Liam and be like, "Can you bring me the bug spray?"
Gotcha. All right.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Robert.
No, that's fair.
I'm
I
sorry.
was kind of vamping till she came back, and then I was going to pause. But no. So